All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to skip the usual doomsday scenarios and the shiny new tech fixes. Instead, we're digging into a really surprising insight from history that might just reveal the one true secret to navigating our climate future. Okay, so let's dive right in. To really get a handle on where we're going, we first have to understand where we are. And that means we've got to challenge a really common and honestly a pretty misleading way of thinking about climate change. You know the one I'm talking about, right? For years, we've had this image in our heads of a car just speeding towards a cliff. We either slam on the brakes and swerve at the very last second, and phew, we're safe. Or we go right over the edge and it's game over. It's a really powerful image, but here's the thing climate thinkers are realizing. It's just not right. And here's the proof. We've already blown past certain thresholds, like that big 1.5 degrees Celsius target the world was aiming for. Now, if we were using that cliff analogy, this is the moment we'd go sailing over the edge. But the world didn't end. The story is clearly far from over. So a much, much better way to think about it is this. We're on a ship. We saw a massive storm on the horizon, and the plan was always to sail around it. But we didn't move fast enough, and now we're not on the edge of the storm, we are smack in the middle of it. This isn't a simple pass-fail test anymore. Success now means surviving the chaos, and that requires a totally different set of skills. So if we're in a storm, how do we survive it? Well, what's really fascinating is that it all comes down to 5 crucial capabilities. You can think of this as the essential toolkit for our ship and, well, for us as the crew. So what are they? They are situational awareness, adaptation, speed, decision-making, and finally, storytelling. Let's break down what each of these really means for our survival out here in the storm. First up, situational awareness. On a ship, this is your radar, right? It's the thing that tells you what's coming at you. But when it comes to climate, our radar is, let's just say it's dangerously blurry. We are consistently underestimating the risks, both financial and social. And at the same time, governments are actually cutting funding for the very systems that monitor our weather and climate. I mean, it's just an absurd situation, right? It's like we're heading into the absolute worst part of the storm. And instead of upgrading our navigation gear, one of our own crew members is back there actively smashing the radar with a hammer. We are basically choosing to sail blind. Okay, next up is adaptation. This is all about how seaworthy our boat is. For the longest time, people thought talking about adaptation was like giving up, admitting defeat. But listen, the waves are already crashing over the deck. We have to make our societies, our cities, our farms, our entire economies way, way tougher to handle the shocks that are already here and the bigger ones we know are coming. And number 3, we need speed. And I mean real speed. The longer we're stuck in the storm, the more our ship is going to get battered. Speed is all about how fast we can decarbonize. And solar power is just a perfect example of this. It's got this amazing learning curve. Every time the world's solar capacity doubles, the price drops by about 20%. So the more we build, the cheaper it gets, and the faster we can power ourselves to safety. These first 3 are our basic tools for getting through this. But the 4th capability, man, this is where things get really, really fascinating. Because it turns out there's a kind of secret ingredient here. The one factor that, throughout all of human history, has decided which societies make it through a crisis and which ones just fall apart. Historians have looked at countless civilizations that got hit with massive climate shocks. We're talking mega droughts, the Little Ice Age, you name it. Some of them collapsed completely, but a whole lot of them survived. And the surprising thing is, it wasn't their technology or their military that made the difference. So what was it? The answer, when you look at all the data from history, is inequality. See, societies with huge gaps between the rich and the poor are fundamentally brittle. They don't have social trust, they're prone to fighting, and they just can't cooperate when a crisis hits. Inequality is the hidden crack in the foundation that can cause a whole society to shatter under pressure. And wow, does this chart just lay out the scale of our vulnerability today? Globally, the richest 10% of humanity control a mind-blowing 76% of all wealth. Meanwhile, the entire bottom half of the world's population owns just 2%. That is an incredibly fragile foundation to be facing a global storm on. And what's crazy is that in some places, it's actually getting worse, not better. Take the United States, for example. Since 1989, the share of wealth held by just the top 0.1% has jumped by almost 60%. And at the very same time, the share held by the bottom 50% has shrunk by more than a quarter. The gap is getting wider, right at the moment we need to be pulling together the most. Okay, so if inequality is the big vulnerability, what's the fix? What's the core strength that's going to protect us and let us actually navigate this storm together? Just think about it. Imagine two different futures, both in a world that warms by 3 degrees. In a world with high inequality, that future is a catastrophe. It's filled with conflict, mistrust, collapse. But that exact same 3 degrees of warming, in a world with high equality and cooperation, it looks totally different. Yeah, it's still full of serious challenges, for sure, but it's navigable. Humanity gets through it. And that is where our fourth capability comes in, decision-making. Specifically, it's how we make decisions as a society. And the answer here is pretty clear. It's stronger, more inclusive democracy. So you might be asking, okay, why democracy? Why is that the key? Well, think about it. Democracies have to be more accountable to everybody. They're way better at getting resources where they need to go during a disaster. The very act of participating in decisions builds the trust and connection we need to weather a storm together. And you know what? They just tend to make better, more inclusive decisions that protect everyone, not just the wealthy few. And that brings us to the fifth and final piece of the puzzle. We've got our radar, a tough boat, we're moving fast, and we're all making decisions together as a crew. What's left? Well, the final capability, it's what we're doing right here, right now. It's storytelling. The stories we tell ourselves, the mental maps we use to understand where we are, they are incredibly powerful. They literally shape how we act, how we feel, and what we believe is possible. And that's exactly why this whole idea of switching from a cliff to a storm is so incredibly important. The moment you stop telling the story of a car about to go off a cliff and you start telling the story of a ship navigating a storm, everything changes. It moves us away from this all-or-nothing, fatalistic mindset and toward one of agency, endurance, and navigation. It gives us a new map and a new way forward. So when you boil it all down, the real takeaway here isn't just about solar panels or seawalls. It's a much deeper question about who we are. It's about recognizing that our greatest risk isn't just the rising water, but the rising inequality that divides us. To survive the storm, we first have to decide what kind of crew we're going to be.